Hey guys, Toast here. Today I want to talk about DICE's new map in Battlefield 1 Nivelle Nights, and how I think DICE had an opportunity to do something unique with this map but ended up missing the opportunity. I want to note that these are my personal opinions and suggestions, and you're of course welcome to disagree or agree with them. Before addressing the opportunity itself, I'd like to say that Nivelle Nights is not a map that I particularly like. That doesn't mean that you can't or shouldn't like it, but here's my reasoning as to why. While an aesthetically pleasing map, I feel that DICE fell into the same pitfall that we see with Fort de Vaux. Granted, the points are not quite as circularly laid out as Fort de Vaux, you still end up with the same cyclical Zerg push that you see on most Fort de Vaux matches, where the vast majority of each team move as a cohesive unit from one enemy point to the next, capturing points but rarely coming into contact with more than an occasional enemy or two, since the enemy team is doing the exact same thing at a different point. Sure, you could stray away from the Zerg, but if you do, the only things you're likely to encounter are a stray enemy player or the enemy Zerg itself, by which you're likely to get decimated. I believe this can be mostly attributed to the trench and road layout on the map, which encourages players to follow the roads and trenches with their teammates from one point to another, since moving into the hills and dirt mounds of the map without the Zerg tends to result in you becoming quick fodder. It encourages players to stick close to one another and move as a single unit, which itself isn't a problem, but combine that with the current layout of the points and you tend to have a ring around the rosy effect for most of the games. This is my experience in Conquest in particular, and again, this is just the reason that I don't like the map. That doesn't mean that you can't enjoy it. Now, with the feelings on the map layout itself out of the way, there's a couple ways in which you can do a night map in a game with varying effects on the player experience. The first way is to give players essentially an equivalent sight capability to daylight, where the map essentially plays just as it would as if it were daylight with just a different atmosphere. The absence of light sources on the map may make things slightly darker in some areas, but you'll still have no trouble discerning anything in the same way that you would be able to if there were shadows on a day map. This is how Nivelle Nights is done, and while there's nothing wrong with this, it really only changes the atmosphere itself and has no real impact on the way in which players go about playing the map differently than if it were a day map. A second way that you can design a night map in a game is to make it more akin to real night, where the absence of a light source is going to make things significantly more difficult to see, and the existence of a light source, with you being in or near that source, is going to have an impact on what you can see outside of that range. This type of design is going to be much more difficult to get right due to the placement, abundance, and direction of light sources having a much bigger impact on the positivity of the player experience, but it also provides a much more unique style of gameplay to the players, forcing them to use different tactics than they may otherwise use. This is a risk-reward opportunity that I feel DICE could have taken, that instead of adding another map allowing you to use the same tactics as pretty much every other map, would have added a more unique experience to the game. Consider the impact that certain light-altering gadgets or mechanics of the game could have had. Think for instance about the effect that flares or incendiary grenades could have on illuminating an area that's very hard to see, in which enemies could be using as a flank route, could be illuminated by the use of these gadgets. The spotlight on the Saint Chamond tank is another way to add an additional utility and specific reason for choosing that particular tank. To take it even further, if DICE were to add more extensive bunkers or buildings with lighting, it would provide the opportunity for players to destroy walls on the bunkers to spread light into surrounding outdoor areas that were previously dark, but if the bunkers were destroyed in their entirety, the area that was previously lit and easy to see in could become completely dark, again changing the way in which you would play in these certain areas. These are just a few examples of ways in which a truly dark map could be more variable and interesting than a map with just a bluish hue, with essentially the same level of sight as a day map. I don't think that DICE is going to be making any changes like this to Nivelle Nights, but I hope that we may have the opportunity to see something like this in Battlefield 1 in the future, as it would at the very least intrigue players with the different ways in which the map could play out based on their actions and decisions. Is it extra work to do a map this way? Well, I'm no game developer, but I would tend to think so. However, would the extra work pay off in the form of a more unique experience for the players? I personally would say yes. Battlefield 1 is still a fun game and a game that I love, but I wouldn't be averse to seeing more unique situations like what I've mentioned, and what sort of experiences they could bring, and I think it would serve DICE well to try some things like this, since it may entice some players who got bored with the game early on and put it down to come back and try out the new experiences. There's of course no guarantee, but that's in part what the CTE is for, to try out new things and see if they work. Now I want to hear your thoughts on Nivelle Nights. Do you like the map? Do you feel that DICE could have done something more interesting with it? Let me know in the comments. If you liked the video, please leave a like, and if you want to see more content, please subscribe. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Toast, and I'll talk to you soon.